Welcome to The Core of It, a podcast by Core Project Advisory. Here we talk about the tools and approaches to help you with a successful project delivery. I'm Sonya Hargreaves, Project Manager for Core Project Advisory.
I'm Amy Griffiths, a Senior Document Controller and Project Administrator for Core Project Advisory.
And today we are talking about document hierarchies and the fun topic, document acronyms.
Oh, yes.
And
the world of
communication.
acronyms,
Yes.
so many. And it's different on every project. Yeah.
It is. So when we talk about document hierarchy, so when you're doing document control for both business and for contractors or a project or clients, there is a level of hierarchy where we would start our sort of document control journey to understand how it all fits. Obviously, first, most companies have, a mission statement or some sort of overarching business strategy statement kind.
You would hope so.
And then from there, you sort of move into your policies. From there, it's procedures.
Yeah.
From there, it's work instructions, guidelines, and then all your kind of lower level documentation. So what's your experience in rolling some of that out?
Rolling some of it out, I enjoy actually in creating stuff. A lot of the time, mostly when I'm joining a new project and new client, they have bits and bobs. They don't specifically have the whole deal. So I do enjoy jumping on and saying, well, actually, we can elaborate on this policy and make X, Y, Z. I've also had to jump in and actually really go more of a global structure and pull policies from other areas where they may have not realized that they've had them as well. So I guess in document control experience, we kind of know what's needed, and generally there might be a template created somewhere where you've got to stay in line with their values, like you're talking about, their structure, their color scheme. Like there's all of this stuff generally would exist somewhere for the larger corporations. So there's always a place to start, basically. You can go in and pull all that information together, and then I feel like the team at Core Project Advisory, we can come in very easily and create a whole list of, depending on how much information they want, to get a project kicked off relating to all of their policies, bringing it down to procedural information. We have our base template of, I guess, what we offer, and then it can just be tailored towards what the project needs, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, when you've got all your forms and templates set up as well, that informs how you, put together a project report each month, and you'd use that template to sort of create the project report. So a lot of those things are needed for anyone working either within a business or under a project banner. If you're not using a collaborative system, you might be a smaller project, or it's not a requirement, or it's not something that's set up yet. Those documents, having them created to lean on, to be able to use. Workflows, similar. You might need to create some steps for people to actually do our process, and workflows are really crucial for that. Good old Visio.
Yeah, actually Visio is a great tool and we've basically, I guess, I like to use Visio to draft off all of that stuff. So we've got to literally do this. You've got a way to move around the project. You've got, if this happens, do this. If this doesn't happen, do that. Did this happen? Yes. No. Then move in that direction. So I do find Visio really handy to sort of give you a base of where to go with creating processes and procedures. PowerPoint obviously is fantastic. There's a lot of new things out there now too. We've had some recent PowerPoints and things created, and
Canva,
yes, that's what I was trying to think of the name of it, Canva. So and you created the whole, it was like a general slideshow through Canva. I haven't actually used it yet, but it looks interesting. And
I think too, like, we're a quality ISO accredited company, and anyone out there that's looking to get quality ISO accredited, it is a bit of a process, and having all those documentation, procedures and protocols in place, you do need that structure to sort of, make everything
the baseline, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely.
Yeah, and also your policies and procedures are obviously document numbered as well, which they can set up your structure of your numbering for your project. Your forms and templates, I think it's very interesting how the project world has evolved. So on projects, I used to have an RFI form that would be joint, like you would just upload that to basically a mail transmittal or communication within the system. It was a separate form, and then they would have to be downloaded and filled out like literally a Microsoft Word template and then uploaded again. Whereas now a lot of systems can create, they have Form Builder, and we can work a lot with Form Builder where you can create the actual form template within the system. RFIs is a perfect example, request for information. So one of our main forms used every day would be the RFI form. So you would, and creating these sorts of forms is relatively easy from our experience. So you can have it on the metadata of the form within the system. You can have your mandatory fields that you want listed if you want project area to be mandatory, contract to be mandatory. All these sort of fields you can sort of, as a super user, you can get in and edit what you want to be on that form specifically. So when you go into the system and create a new request for information, you would go into your mail area, select your request for information, and a big template pops up within the system. So there's no adding anything else. You can add attachments if you want, or you can pull information directly from the document register. So when you're filling out your form, you're filling out your mandatory fields, you're writing what the information is that you're requesting, and then the template has a section further down for the response. And it's also run through a workflow process. So when you send that off for information, so a contractor might be sending to the client a request for information on XYZ, that gets sent off. It's all within the system. It's all traceable. It's reportable, sitting there waiting. And then it's also holding people accountable for the timeline of the status it might be sitting at.
All date stamped.
When it's going to be, it has to be responded to.
And too, with doing it that way, you might be using a Word file template to inform your online system strategy and process, but, you can also introduce statusing to help with certain things as well. So speaking of RFIs, so request for information, so what are some other acronym document control terminologies?
Where do I start? Document control. So NCRs.
AS. Non-Conformance Report.
Non-Conformance Report. Some projects like to elaborate on the short word. So we will create an NCR, for example. Some projects like to have NCRR, like non-conformance report response, or project manager response. Like that, it can. How long's a piece of string? It can be huge. We also have variations, which on most projects we have a VI or VA. I've also had before as well.
Or VAR.
VAR, yeah, VAR for a response. I've even had. We have transmittals, which I think most people would be familiar with a transmittal, but document name that it's listed as a TRAN, and I've had TRANR, transmittal response. So if a transmittal is created from our document register and sent out to the contractor, sometimes there's questions on, hey, I didn't receive the native file, or does this have anything else that goes along with it? So, within your metadata system, you want to have whatever forms you've got, you want to have it as a bit of a form of communication as well. And you need to, I guess, come up with a plan on what does that look like. Is it going to be, if you have a technical, more formal document warranting a more formal response, is the response going to also be formal, or is it going to be more of a general correspondence? So when you can come to selecting the status of the document, if it's awaiting approval, or what are some other statuses you might have?
Reviewed with comments.
Where's the popular one?
Reviewed, no comments.
Yeah. So
Rejected,
that's my favourite. A lot of engineers probably think that for document control. So you've got to have your hierarchy of where's it going, what's happening, what's it look like, where it's sitting at the moment, and the reporting function is very helpful with that as well.
Yeah, and I think too, it also gives you a mechanism to have different people trigger those different events. And if you're, talking about commercial and contractual communications or forms or documents, that, you might be able to create those in a way that they can be drafted by, maybe an engineer or a senior manager of the project or in the company, if it's a business document. But then the person who's actually authorised to trigger that piece of communication can then get an auto workflow to review, make changes as necessary, and trigger that off for for issues. So,
and it's also a good point to go through and point out what who can see these documents in their draft state. So even if you're putting a new or creating a new procedure or policy to put into your system, with the review process being automated as well, the workflow, the 5 people that are involved are the only 5 people that will see it sitting there in its draft form, unless it's then sent out as approved to everybody else or to other companies. So you can have a lot of control with the right line that you want things to go down.
And that depends on the system as well, in terms of who can see it, who can access it. Like even internally for us, if we're updating one of our own procedures, it's hidden away from, certain people and, authorised through, our own internal processes. So, it's depending on what the system is and who the people are that are involved and where it's going and what it's for. It's all got to be relative and a proper work instruction.
Yes.
Or process or visio diagram, whatever you choose.
I love my work instructions. Yeah.
And they change, right, as well, like when we go.
Oh, there's so many revisions. I think I've got a document control procedure on Rev 11 or something because it's had so many changes. But it's been the start of a new project and a new company, so it obviously grows and evolves. And
And I think people quite often get mistaken that, a procedure or something of that nature should be, locked away forever.
Yeah, it was on the shelf gathering dust and that, people ever refer to it. But
it needs to grow and evolve because technology changes, people changes, processes changes, departments change sometimes. So you have to be able to, make sure that they're all flexible. Sometimes procedures simply become not required anymore. Meeting minute templates.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many I've seen of those over the years. And, a lot of people are not big fans of taking minutes. And we talked in our earlier podcasts about training sessions and about recording things, and people may not take minutes anymore. They may just refer to a recording of a meeting and not actually physically take meeting minutes anymore. So
I certainly don't have templates for minutes anymore. That was sort of a bit of a thing of the past, only in the last probably 12 to 18 months, I would say. But a lot of current projects I'm on, they'll do their template within the system as a new, not like a mail, but almost like opening up as like a new mail, and all their minutes are just in there, or it's just on a spreadsheet within the system that's updated each week. So everything's evolving all the time, and I think that's crucial for the project world.
Yeah, and I think that can also bring its own challenges of consistency is not there, because if you're doing it one way on one project and then a different way on another project, and that can be challenging, frustrating. But I think if it's a good outcome for the project or the business, and it's a good decision, and whoever the right person is that makes that decision to use it that way, then.
But then also, if somebody's come up with this grand plan, like a comment I quite like with engineers is they all like to reinvent the wheel, and they're all very good at it, and they're
going to get it right this time.
So it's continuously evolving. So generally, somebody might come in with a great idea on one project in regards to a template or something, or how they handle minutes. But I find, you can then think, well, hey, actually that might work on this project, or that might, there might be one company as the umbrella under all the projects. And it's like to try and keep processes as similar so that people can come and go and cross jobs as easy as they can by keeping all the processes the same. So I think we quite often try to roll that out to keep things consistent across the board. And it's probably quite important to look at in the project world when you're going through setting up, and especially if you've got multiple things under one umbrella, for sure.
And then if you get a different manager or a different person that's looking after that project come along, there's could be a possibility of change
we'll have
just
that happen
despite best efforts. So, definitely the flexibility to adapt to those changes. And honestly, I always say to people, it really doesn't matter necessarily how you do something, so long as it's relatively consistent and everybody is across the same process, for the project or the business. Then you've got a way to record things. You've got a way to issue things out. You've got a mechanism for approvals. You've got, paths to follow that everybody is doing at the same time. So, if it's this way for this project, but this way for that project, it's not a terrible thing. You just need to be making sure that people are aware of what they need to do, and, things aren't getting lost, because you don't want to lose information and you don't want to lose history on things.
No,
That's a big thing.
Yeah. Where do you've probably just touched on this a little bit, but where do you find it falls over?
Definitely changing resourcing.
Yeah.
That's where I see the most challenges or changes in any process or documentation flow or knowledge, because especially if you've got things going on in project space in business, I find it's not as hard or different, because business is business, and your day-to-day generally is the same, but in a project, things can just change left, right and center. And when you have resources change, especially losing key people, that can be a really big challenge for the project, but all the more reason why, if you've got your information stored correctly in your processes and you're getting things out of people's Outlook emails is a big critical thing, because you can't access things. You could Google something and it might not bring up, that particular mail that you're chasing, because it's not labeled the way that you thought it would be.
The project, that's where I was going to go. I think for me, it's all communication, and people are so quick to just send a message over Teams or over Microsoft. I send an email or whatever, and that communication generally leaves with that person if they go on to a different area or a different company or a different project or whatever. So I think trying to have processes in place for managing the communication and steering people, that's really for me why I try to keep the database as easy to use, so that people would prefer it as a way. They can have a general mail on the database, and then it's all there for everybody to see. And through document control, and there's a lot of document requests for us to process things, then somebody might pick up the phone and ring and ask about it, or somebody might just send a quick message on the message communicator, and none of that's captured. So we'll always try to go back and actually attach it in somewhere within the system, or if it starts off as a request through the system and becomes a mail and there's back and forth, we can then print that mail to PDF and then attach that into the system. So communication is key, and I think it's a huge part of training the resources that come on board, and the best way to keep it all under the one spot.
Yeah, and I think the biggest learning overall is it's not about how an individual wants to manage the document hierarchy documents or all the acronyms in the communication. It's just got to be something that's going to make sense to the project or to the business. Yeah. And that's kind of I guess the key summary in managing those kind of two pieces of, the document control world, because the minute you make it about someone's personal decision, that's when it can get a bit muddy. And, it's about the project, it's about the business, making it consistent and right for everybody. So
making sure all the information goes where it's supposed to go and doesn't leave with you if you go elsewhere. Thanks for joining us on our podcast discussing our document hierarchies, some acronyms, and our forms and templates throughout the database system, and getting into the nitty-gritty of communication, how we're storing information. Please join us on our next podcast. We look forward to chatting. Thanks.
Bye.